have it. You can see the consequences of Marxism now in Europe. That kind of socialism, heavy state spending, heavy taxation, has now become so out of control that it is visibly failing. So if they want to subscribe to that, in a few years' time, everybody will be laughing at them and saying, well, there you are, that was the crisis of Marxism. Nobody now wants to go that way. But at the moment, they're still at it. They'll all be in Rio. They won't have any realization that the gravy train has finally tipped into the gulch and that they can't go on robbing the taxpayers blind because the taxpayers have run out of money. They can't go on borrowing because the more they borrow, the more they put themselves in hock to China. They can't go on doing that. So all this nonsense is soon going to have to stop. I regard it as very significant that they have now abandoned the notion that the supposed threat to the climate is the most serious problem humanity now faces. In the opening sentences of the current draft of the conclusions of the Rio conference, that has now been taken out and replaced, as I've said earlier, by a statement that poverty is the most serious threat. So it's very important. We are making...
All right, you're right. Stay there. And, of course, now poverty, you got to pay the UN taxes. But the UN says they want to make the third world poverty-stricken, post-industrial. Let's talk about your deep research into that straight ahead with Lord Monckton. Then your phone call. Stay with us. Yes, the UN, the globalist, the crony monopoly men that are anti-free market seek a global dictatorship, organized evil, organized authoritarianism. As Lord Monckton of scienceandpublicpolicy.org, former top advisor to Margaret Thatcher, award-winning journalist. I won't go over it all. His bio is lengthy. And he is joining us from London right now. Okay, this is a short segment, and then we're going to come back and get into other points you think are important and take calls. But we're not overstating, and I know you break down these numbers, of what Copenhagen 3 years ago would have done to the third world if implemented. And they tried to sell that as, come on, you've got to love the black people especially, and the poor Asians and Latin Americans. Let us put this in place. But then the draft got leaked. They confirmed it was the draft. You helped do that. And it was right at double the cuts in the third world that would even be on the West. So they tried to sell it to them as, we'll cut off the energy to the West and give it to you. But they found out it was really a death sentence. And you look at all these, quote, environmentalists, to a man. They put out papers about too many people and get rid of the third world. Really hardcore racists, going back to Margaret Sanger, all of them, and I know you've studied this, Lord Monckton, pose as liberals. They're not even really liberals. That's their cover. A real killer poses as a non-threatening, trendy chicken neck. Can you break down who these people are from fighting them for 30-plus years and correct me if I'm wrong, that their plan is a death sentence to over 1 billion people in the third world when they sell us on it's for the poor. Give us world government. Pay the UN trillions for the poor. Give us the environmental straitjacket for the poor. Tell us what's really happening.
Well, here's the thing. If a nation wants to give money to the poor of other nations, it can do so directly. It doesn't need the UN for that. But the UN has realized it's increasingly hard to justify its existence. And so it has captured various international subjects, such as poverty, and they tried on the climate change thing, the Agenda 21 thing, to make themselves seem relevant and to allow themselves to continue to attract more money from governments. Privately, many of us here in Britain are thinking that even though Britain has one of the 5 permanent seats on the governing Security Council of the United Nations, we would actually be better off giving up that seat as long as we could leave the United Nations altogether and not either have to pay the billions every year it costs to belong or to be governed by the increasingly intrusive regulations and powers that this organization is trying to arrogate to itself. The people behind it essentially are the governing class worldwide, of which I am a member. But I'm one of those, rather like Margaret Thatcher, who doesn't think that it's our job to tell everybody around the world what to do, still less to extinguish poor people in the third world. Extinguishing poverty ought not to mean extinguishing the poor. It ought to mean making the poor better off, because it's only if they become more wealthy and more prosperous and at least have a basic standard of living that's acceptable, clean water, health, food, also freedom from disease, proper education, proper communications, and, of course, fossil-fueled electricity. It's the cheapest kind of electricity, and that lifts people out of poverty faster than anything. It's only if you do lift them out of poverty that you bring poverty permanently to an end by ending overpopulation, because overpopulation is caused by poverty.
And they know that. The average person in the third world has about 7 children. 5 of them live on average. And the Royal Commission said that in 49. You industrialize, they have on average 1.3 children. And if these people all believe in overpopulation, then make them rich. But the globalists know their fight is to keep us poor. They're fighting wealth. They know that the normal state of humanity is to become more wealthy.
That's right. And this is the main target now of these Marxists or totalitarians or legalists, or call them what you will. But they're very, very unpleasant and ambitious people. They have a hatred of their fellow humans. Some of them have even talked of wiping out 6 billion of the present 7 billion human population.
Lord Monckton, stay there. Incredible. I want you to break down the numbers on this. You are one of the top experts on their plan. And absolutely, they hate everyone. They see someone successful, they hate it. They have a primal dominance, a twisted dominance, though. A true dominance wants to build everybody up. They want to destroy. We'll be back with Lord Monckton. Stay with us. We're going back to Lord Monckton in a moment, and then we're going to go to your phone calls for the rest of the hour with the preeminent expert on the authoritarians using fake environmentalism as a pretext to take over. Well, they're not concerned about the troops using DU. They're not concerned about overfishing. They're not concerned about toxic waste dumping. It's all about carbon dioxide, or selectively saying this is endangered, that's endangered, to take your property. I've seen it firsthand in Central Texas, where they take people's property, some cases don't even pay them, and then build homes or shopping malls on it, and the former mayor makes the money off of it who helped take it. And the UN can't get, again, the Congress to do it. Same in your country, your parliaments. So they're going in and taking over local cities. We'll talk about that in a moment with Lord Monckton of scienceandpublicpolicy.org. So much research and documentation right there on that site. Can't recommend it enough. Brief pit stop here. When I plug books, videos, T-shirts, water filters, it supports the broadcast, the news organization that we're trying to grow here. But it's also the best books, the best videos, the best T-shirts, the best water filters I found anywhere at incredibly discounted prices. InfoWarsShop.com or InfoWarsStore.com. Both of those URLs will take you to our shopping cart or link through at InfoWars.com. You can also call 888-253-3139. We have the best gravity-fed filters out there, side-by-side comparisons to the leading competitors. There's no comparison. Look at it for yourself. And we've got it at the lowest prices out there with a 10% off on top of it of Pro Pure. We have the Life Straw that's great for survival out in the field at the discounted prices with the free citizen rule book. All of it at InfoWarsShop.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139, 888-253-3139. Also, we have the nightly news. It's even picked up by some cable systems now. It's been in beta for 9 months, but you can watch that, all my films and more, 9 years up and running at Prisonplanet.tv, 15-day free trial at Prisonplanet.tv. And we're now carrying out of print for a while, but back in print, Tragedy and Hope, the globalists admitting their crimes, and None Dare Call It Conspiracy by Gary Allen with Larry Abraham from the 1970s, the book that really crystallized my awakening, back in print, available at Infowars.com, discounted. Okay, going back to Lord Monckton. Lord Monckton, I want to finish up with their eugenics agenda. You were cut off by the break where you were talking about some of them want 6 billion of us dead. They want green fascism. They want hot baths for themselves, but old ladies should go without. And we know who said that. I mean, this is a really scary group trying to sexy up feudalism. So break that down for us, and then other tidbits that are on the radar screen, because I've been asking the questions, and then we're going to calls.
What's happening here is that the world's governing class has got out of hand. It's got used to the uniquely new ability to tax people with great certainty and to a very large proportion of their income. This makes government far more wealthy than ever it was under any communist country. And they're using their power and their wealth to increase that power and wealth still further. And they have come to realize that the biggest cost they now face is in looking after their own poor people and in making contributions to the poverty of others further afield. And it has occurred to some of them, it's really very straightforward, that the simplest thing to do would be to kill all those no-account poor people that don't matter, so that they themselves can be even richer still. This is the kind of childish thinking, and indeed very sinister thinking, that is now prevailing among the governing class. And it's dressed up behind this green fig leaf of environmentalism to make it sound acceptable to people who ought to know better. I had a pointy head email me just today saying that he is a prophet and he foresees that we won't see any climate trouble in the next 100 years. You know, they've kind of got that one. But it's going to be in 500 years' time, and he is the prophet of doom in 500 years' time. He knows perfectly well he'll be dead and the rest of us will be by then, so he can make whatever prophecies he likes and it won't make any difference. This is the kind of pointy-headed stupidity that is now becoming all too commonplace among people who would previously have been properly educated in the Aristotelian canons of logic, in the Pythagorean canons of mathematics, in the Ciceronian and Periclean canons of politics, and they would have a better understanding of how not to be so cruelly stupid. Because the point is that what these people are doing to the world is they are trying to destroy it. They say they're trying to save it and preserve it like some sort of museum piece in aspic. You only have to look at the record of extinctions in the past to see that this is quite a violent place because of the weather, because of the volcanoes, because of the meteorites, because the sun occasionally grows dim. All these things have major impacts down here. They have much greater impacts than anything we can do. And these have caused mass extinctions in the past. We now have the capacity to cause mass extinctions if we were to use widespread nuclear weapons, for instance. But by adding a little bit of carbon dioxide to the climate, we're not actually going to make very much difference apart from making things a lot more agreeable and warmer in places like Scotland.
And by the way, since you raised that, just interrupt, Lord Monckton, since you brought up the sun, when you were at Copenhagen 3 years ago, really routing them and then had the police beat you up and all the rest of it, and of course that's they've gone after you at other events as well, and it's been caught on tape. Here's National Geographic, solar superstorms, how they could impact our high-tech world. And all the mainline scientists, as you know, say that the sun's the main driver. A child knows that. It's variations. But they had a vote, and the UN said, to counter you and others, that we vote that the sun has no effect. I mean, this is cuckoo. This is like saying the sun doesn't make the sun come up in the morning. I mean, this really shows their I guess it's not childlike authoritarianism. They're used to a population that just believes whatever they say. But how do they counter National Geographic? It even admits, and it's a big, pro-eugenicist outfit, anti-human deal, that the sun's driving climate. I mean, it seems like are they letting reality in? I mean, why?
I think finally reality is beginning to break through. See, the left have made three rather big mistakes, perhaps strategic mistakes, in the last few years. First of all, they created the European Union as a communist, bureaucratic, centralist oligarchy, rather like the old Soviet Union in Russia. That has now failed, as all such communist systems are bound to fail, because the money to pay for it has run out. Then they switched onto this global warming bandwagon. That has now failed, which is why they've suddenly realized that they can no longer get away with saying to people that climate change is the worst problem the world faces, because it isn't. The worst problem the world faces is poverty. And getting the UN to do anything about poverty is completely hopeless. Money that goes to the UN tends to stay at the UN, paying for the lavish lifestyles of the people who run it. So the third mistake I think the left have made is to attempt